there, friends. Welcome to episode 29 of Knit Talk with a Tech Editor. I'm Megan of the Unapologetic Knitter, and I'm a tech editor. And today we're going to have I just realized I didn't put on any makeup. You know what? That's fine. We're going to get vulnerable today, so I am just going to stay makeup free. You get to see me with all my scars and lumps and bumps today. Okay, so today we're going to talk about an email that I received last week and just have a really honest conversation about our bodies and knitwear design, and I just hope you'll sit back and enjoy it with me. It will be slightly less technical than a lot of the videos we've done in the past, but as I mentioned at the end of last week, this topic kind of hit me hard, and not because it's a bad question, but just it kind of sat with me. So let's talk about it and hope that me being open and honest with you about my journey to get where we are today will help you feel better about the journey that you're on. Here's what the email that I received said. Is bust measurement the only way that knit patterns are sized? My abdomen is as large or larger than my bust, which makes my hips larger as well. This is why I have not considered a sweater. Socks are much easier to fit. Why don't the designers use various body measurements to fit those who are not model thin or with perfect bodies? And the question seems innocuous enough. And it is a great question about how designers approach designs. But we're going to talk about that before the end of the episode. There will still be some technicalities here. But what hit me was the concept of prioritizing thin bodies or perfect bodies. And I just want to be clear, I'm not calling this person out. I'm not saying that they asked anything wrong. I have had the same conversation in my head with friends. I see it all the time on social media. So please know that I'm not chastising anybody. It's a perfectly normal question, but it was kind of triggering for me. And so that's what I wanted to talk about a little bit at the beginning of the episode. And maybe we can lift each other up a little bit. So as a cisgender, heterosexual, middle class, even maybe upper middle class white woman, I carry a lot of privilege with me in this world. And I want to acknowledge that. I think if a lot of people were to happen upon this podcast or meet me in person and know nothing else about me, they might think that I've got everything. And socioeconomically, they're not wrong. I've had very few barriers, pardon me, in this life. And I was able to choose this path because I have a partner who is in a career that is financially secure so that I can make less money and still live comfortably in this world. I went through college on a career path to a completely different career and still landed here because it's what brings me joy. And I don't say this to brag, but rather just acknowledge the privilege and the ease that I have come to this point in my life. And so my life could look perfect. I'm not model thin, but the perception of things being easy or perfect are there. And I fully understand that. And so what I wanted to share with you today is far less severe than abuses that many people in this world suffer. And I'm not trying to put myself on that level, but rather just share a little bit about my life so that we can maybe reframe our perspectives a little bit. So going into I'm getting a little bit nervous to talk about this, but going into the perception that my life has been fairly perfect, there were some things that shaped my emotions coming to this point. So when I was 10, someone that I loved and respected told me I had fat ankles, which most things, in this life, it's pretty innocuous, right? And that same person, when I went away to college and put on a little bit of weight, probably more than a little bit, I don't know, I don't remember, it was 20-something years ago, poked me in the stomach and told me if I would just stop eating carbs, it would just go away and I'd be skinny. So there, somewhere between the age of 10 and 20 in my life, and I suspect in many people's lives, there comes a point where people think it's okay to start talking about your body without knowing you. And those things leave scars, right? So despite the outward appearance of perhaps me having a perfect life or an easy life, there are a lot of emotional scars that go along with that. So now I'm 42 years old, almost 43, and I am just literally starting to come to the terms with my body, and that this is the body I have. I could try crazy exercise routines, and I have. I could starve myself to be thin, and I have. And every time I do that, I'm unhappy. I don't physically feel better about where I'm at in the world. And I bounce back to the shape that I have. And I know there are people who are professional athletes and they spend their life talking about staying healthy and fit, and I admire and accept that those people have those perspectives, but it hasn't been a good fit for me. So I am just now starting to come to terms with my body. So with all of that said, I wondered if we could maybe just take a moment today and recognize that the body that we are in today, in this moment, is perfect. And I know that that's a hard thing to accept when we are constantly bombarded with pictures of the ideal body or the model thin body. But I think what I'm trying to do each morning when I wake up is go, okay, I woke up. My heart is beating. My lungs are breathing for me. I'm thinking, I'm typing, I'm doing. And so today my body is perfect. And it's doing what it needs to do. So that's where I am today. And I hope that maybe sharing that with you will help you a little bit today. Because your body is perfect in this moment. If you want to make changes to it and feel better through eating or exercise or whatever means you choose, by all means do it. You'll have my full support because I think we should do whatever we need to do to feel better about ourselves. But I think labeling other people as model perfect or ideal can be really, I'm not sure what the word is, but you're glossing over the things that you don't see about them. Those people may have illnesses in their life that have led them to be thin, or pressures from their own family, kind of like what I had, that forces them into a way of life that they're not comfortable with. So I want to reiterate, I'm not calling out the person for writing something wrong. I think that they used words that we have all used at one point or another, but I just hope maybe we can reframe for ourselves a little bit what perfection in our own bodies means. Anyway, that's just some food for thought. But let's take a look at why designers design the way they do and maybe help you find a way to reframe approaching sweaters if you don't have the body that you see portrayed in knitting patterns. Okay, so I think I have mentioned in previous videos, but I'm going to touch on it again, that when a designer creates a new design, whether it's a sweater or a hat, socks, whatever it is that they're creating a pattern for, they're creating it based on their body because it's the one that they have to reference, right? I do the same thing. If I'm going to be designing a sweater, I'm using my body measurements to create the framework, which I then grade up and down for other body circumferences. So let's get really honest about this little body that I have. So I am 5'3" tall. On any given day throughout the month, I have a 41 to 42 inch chest circumference. I have a 36 inch waist circumference. I have a 50 inch hip circumference. My upper arms are 14 inches in circumference at the widest point. My arms are 17 inches long from the underarm to my wrist bone. And I have a 12 inch shoulder to shoulder measurement. So a lot of those numbers aren't going to mean anything to you if you don't spend a lot of time grading patterns. But when I put it all together on paper and look at the shape, I noticed some things. First of all, for my shoulder width and my arm length, I have a very large chest. And for my chest and waist, I have very large hips. So I think that puts me in the pear shape. So I do have a waist, I do go in, but then I go way out. And my shoulders are very narrow for an adult. 12 inches is not very wide, but what I wanted to use those numbers to compare with is to look at the proportions of a designer's body rather than the size of their body. So if we look at someone like Isabel Kramer, Heidi Kermeyer, I hope I'm saying that right, or Andrea Maurer, 3 beautiful designers that create wonderful garments and are size inclusive. Their body shapes are very different from mine. If we were to either shrink me down so that I had their chest circumference or enlarge them magically so they had my chest circumference, the body proportions would still be a lot different. So even if I said, okay, I'm standing next to Andrea Maurer and we have the exact same chest circumference, our bodies would probably proportionally enlarge as well. So if we were to say that she and I were the same size here, where we base designs on, her shoulders would still be wider. Her arms would still be narrower. Her hips would still be narrower because proportionally she's built a lot different from me. So when it comes to choosing a garment, I always find it really helpful to look not only obviously at the sizes that the designers are providing, but also what they look like structurally. Is the garment going to fit me the same way it fits them regardless of the size? Okay, so let's get down to the heart of the question that person actually wrote in about. Why do we design for chest circumference and not any other part of the body? So when we think about a body and all of the different parts that we have to fit a garment around, whether it's arms, necks, waist, hips, chest, for many people, not everyone, but many, the chest circumference is the largest part of the body. So that's what we target. If we were a completely different shape as a species and our upper arms were perhaps the largest part of our body, that is what we would target. So we largely are targeting sort of the worst case scenario. That sounds like a bad way to say it, but the largest part of a body is the target for a garment design. When we consider building a garment, whether you're working bottom up or top down, it doesn't matter in this case, there's a lot going on around the chest region. Whether you have breasts or not, the widest part of our body is right around the same line vertically. I'm sitting back, or I should sit back here, right? So the widest part of our body, whether you have breasts or not, is generally in line with our underarm. So we've got the complication of achieving the widest part of the garment at the same level that we're also dividing the garment for armholes or sleeves. But, and especially in the case when you might be working bottom up, in that same region, depending on the style of the neckline, you're also dealing with the shaping of the neckline. So from sort of the midpoint of your ribs or just below your underarms up to the shoulders, there's a lot going on. It is the most complicated part of a garment. So that's why we target that area as the base measurement for a garment. What happens below that, so whether it's sleeve shaping, whether it's length or circumference, or body shaping, again, length or circumference, is a lot easier by general standards to tailor to fit your own body than it would be to try to tailor any of the fitting in the chest. So knowing that we target sort of the worst case scenario or the hardest part of the body to tailor a garment to, there's no way for a designer to grade a pattern for every body. As I mentioned earlier, they only have their body to frame, to reference. So if they have a straight body or a really narrow waist relative to their chest, their garment design is likely going to reflect that. You could say, well, why don't we start designing for abdomen circumference, as in the case of this person who wrote in and say, well, I have a larger abdomen, so I want to choose a size based on that. You may end up finding that the chest circumference would then not be, or like all of the work that gets done up here would not be the right size. So it's kind of a case of not having every body available to design for, because there's always going to be something a little bit different in every person's body. Designers work from guidelines provided to them by differing bodies that have taken average body sizes across various sizes of communities. There's the Craft Yarn Council website that has provided sort of standard body measurements. And there is another reference called the ASTM, the American Standards for Textiles and Media, I believe. I can't remember. Textiles and Materials, I think is what it is. And they too have taken a population that is unknown to me and averaged body sizes. So what we do is we look for as the designer, our chest circumference that we are targeting, and we use those averages to grade up and down. So, you know, if you are someone who has a larger waist circumference than chest circumference, you may not actually be referenced in that book in a way that relates to the chest circumference that you have. I hope that makes sense. So you can target one or the other, but the odds are likely that the two won't necessarily directly relate. So I guess all of that is to say that every body is unique, and when designers create a garment for this portion of a person's body, the assumption has to be that you can tailor the sleeves or the body to fit yourselves. Now, is it a fair assumption? Maybe not. Not every knitter has the skills to understand how the numbers work and how that relates to their body. But it's a far easier adjustment that designers believe a knitter can make rather than having to reshape everything in the yoke. But if you are interested in making modifications to garments, if you've been here for a while, you probably know that I have a pretty large library talking about how to make various modifications to garments. If you are new here, and this happens to be the first episode you're watching, I have a great library that is ever growing on how to make modifications to sweater patterns, specifically to tailor it for your own body. And if you don't see something you want more information about, you can always write in and let me know about it, and I can create a video for it. So when it comes to choosing a garment for your body, I think it's important for us to be realistic about what we actually want the garment to look like and feel like on our body, and perhaps how far you're willing to go to get it. So the first thing that I would suggest is either look for designers that have a body shape like you, which can be tricky because not all designers use themselves as their model. But the next thing you can do is, if the designer is the model and doesn't have a body shape like you, look at what some of their test knitters may have done. The body shape of the test knitters will be more varied than the designers, obviously, because they're just themselves. So go through some of the existing projects and see if you can find someone with a body shape that looks like yours and see what the garment looks like on them. That will really help you to know, or at least give you a baseline of understanding of how the garment might fit your curves and angles differently than the designer. If you are a Ravelry user, there is a new resource available that comes in the form of a hashtag, which sounds a lot like social media, but designers who create garments that cover bust circumferences 60 inches and above, roughly, now can use the hashtag size inclusive. And I've got a link in the description below the video to sweater patterns that have got the hashtag size inclusive. So that is a great way, especially if you're, pardon me, unfamiliar with designers or sizing options. It's a great way to see what sweaters are out there. Then you can, or that you can then go look at the examples either on the designer themselves or on the test knitters to see how those larger or smaller sizes fit depending on where you're at in the range of body sizes. In the advanced pattern search on Ravelry, there is also a tab called the age, size, fit category. And I don't know how long these categories have been there. I just started looking for them in the last couple of years, but they now have a plus size option. They have a petite size option, which is lovely because someone at 5'3", I sort of ride that line between petite and regular height. But they've also got maternity fit, tall fit, or oversized fit, which I think would be more of a design ease element rather than a body size, but it's there as an option. So Ravelry is giving you some options to tailor your searches to be more inclusive for your body. So I know this episode has been a lot. The first part of it was a little bit emotional for me, and I hope you won't judge me too much for that. But I guess I want to say that I do understand the draw of new and trendy knitting patterns, and you want to get in there and make something beautiful. But I think it's really important to look at the designer's proportions relative to yours and see where you may be able to tweak a pattern to make that new trendy design that's on a body that doesn't match your body proportions fit yours, or whether you should consider moving on and finding a designer who perhaps designs for someone with proportions like yours. I will admit that with all of my knowledge about adapting patterns, there are some designers whose work I absolutely love, and I still choose not to knit their designs because our body proportions are not the same, and I know it simply won't fit me the same way it fits them, regardless of the size of the chest circumference. So I think we're gonna wrap it up there today, folks. This was a conversation that I was happy to have, and also one that can be hard to have. So I hope that you took something positive away from it. And as a matter of fact, if something struck you in today's episode that you really enjoyed, I would love for you to leave a comment below the video and let me know what struck you. Hopefully it was something positive. I think celebrating our bodies and recognizing our own perfections in our body, even if it's just in this moment, is something that we can all consider a good thing. Next week, we're going to take another look at a neckline modification. This was a write-in request for V-neck shaping. So we're going to take a look at how to adapt a V-neck on a pullover so that it's wider, narrower, shallower, or deeper, and that one's going to be pretty math-centric, so get your calculators ready. I want to thank you all so much for continuing to be here with me each week, for all of your likes and all of your subscribes. I want to remind you that if you liked today's video, even though it was a tougher topic, remember to hit that like button, and if you feel like there's other people in your life that we could help, remember to tell them about this channel. Have a great rest of your week, my friend, and happy knitting.